is said that war and crisis have a tendency to bring not just the bad, but also the good. War, while being very divisive in nature, can also encourage groups to unite and combine their powers and resources to solve that problem they have in common. This example of fighting in union despite being different from one another was given by the 10 legendary warriors, a group of mega-level ancient Digimon possessing ultimate strength. All 10 are considered supreme and divine entities due to their roles in protecting the digital world from Lucimon's influence, an angel Digimon who summoned a long period of darkness after commencing a rebellion. We know how powerful these 10 are. However, not much is written about the relation amongst the members. Sure, some might have gotten along quite well, but I don't doubt that some might have held hostile relations towards others. Ancient Garurumon is the warrior representing light, and Ancient Sphinxmon represents darkness. As both represent each other's opposite attribute, we might safely assume that they might have not liked each other, but by being confronted by a threat so big to be capable of altering digital life as we know it, they were capable of setting aside their differences and fought together and actually even died together. This war is Digimon history and Digimon heritage, literally. These 10 legendary warriors became legends for not only risking their lives, they also passed on their powers to 10 Digimon types who would become the inheritors. The ferocious dragon Digimon inherited the attribute of flame, the well-respected beast Digimon inherited the attribute of light, the insect Digimon occupying forests and jungles inherited the attribute of thunder, the birdman Digimon with excellent abilities of flight along with the fairy Digimon both inherited the attribute of wind. The mammal and icy Digimon who live remotely in the polar regions inherited the attribute of ice. The mythical animal Digimon and demon beast Digimon who govern the underworld inherited the attribute of darkness. The aquatic Digimon who live in the oceans and rivers inherited the attribute of water. The plant Digimon who can be found in various areas inherited the attribute of wood. Deep inside the earth you have the rock species Digimon or rock species Digimon and mineral species Digimon who inherited the attribute of earth. This leaves us with the mutant Digimon who are by far the most mysterious out of the bunch. It is said that they inherited the attribute of steel. However, I do believe that mutant Digimon either lost access or forgot their true heritage through time. War, while being very divisive in nature, can also encourage groups to unite and combine their powers and resources to solve that problem they have in common. The 10 legendary warriors set their differences aside and fought as brothers and sisters, and 8 of them died in combat, but they spread their message of union. There were examples. However, while their story became legend, it ultimately became a myth. And the problem with myth is that it is hard to decipher what is true or false. Ultimately, people will stop caring and ultimately forget their heritage. And old relics like Digimon, said to be all-knowing, wouldn't even be listened to. And once this Digimon would pass away, a very important source for truth would disappear, leaving the newer generation with confusion and ignorance, which often leads to repeating mistakes made in the past, and mistakes are bound to happen. A lot of time passed by after the demise of the 10 legendary warriors. Time did not only change the fundamentals of the digital world, it changed the very genetics of Digimon, which only intensified the speed at which some would completely lose sight of their heritage. To give you 3 examples. First one, some dragon Digimon who normally inherited the attribute of flame became incapable of using it, and instead of living above land, they prefer to live underwater along with those fish Digimon who are the true inheritors of water. Second example, some dragon Digimon became one with the darkness, occupying the darkest areas, which normally is a place occupied by those who inherited the attribute of darkness. A last example, some dragon Digimon decided to live inside the earth, lurking within tunnels filled with various metals like Huanglong ore. These underground areas are normally places where mineral and ore Digimon would live, But now dragons and other types of Digimon changed habitats, changed nature, changed genetics. The very fabric of the Digimon universe and the laws which once defined how Digimon would behave changed entirely after the sacrifice made by the 10 legendary warriors and with the intervention of outside forces who would either start experimenting on Digimon or create new Digimon, or receive certain tools to change the very definition of Digivolution. So it is of no surprise that Digimon are now different than what they once were, and with a common history that hasn't been archived or is simply inaccessible, Digimon would forget the union which was once formed despite having major differences in attributes. Instead, survival of the fittest became the new norm, where Digimon of the same types and different types alike would fight with their personal motives. Some of those fights would be small and limited, while some would be so big that the Digimon world, or at least one server, would feel pressured to find solutions. And these conflicts are happening under the ever-watchful eyes of a god who came with an idea that could bring more stability and order. Somewhere in the forests and jungles of presumably File Island, there is an insectoid Digimon that goes by the name of Flymon. A Digimon capable of flying at extremely high speed with a buzzing sound that can completely numb the sense of hearing of those who hear it. Flymon is a Digimon who did not get a proper Digivolution line, aside maybe of Okuwamon, although this Digivolution is said to be a part of the Kuwagamon line, leaving Flymon with no proper ultimate. That changed after Dragon Rod Art decided to give it a Digivolution line up till the Mega level. You can find a link towards the Twitter account in the description box. The transition form of Flymon is called Cocoomon, a big cocoon Digimon if you compare its height to that of a human. Cocoomon is an insect Digimon of the virus type, meaning that it probably has a certain thirst for power and domination with a tendency to rewrite its environment into one that it sees more suitable. Its story is a good sequel to that of Flymon, as it tells the story of how Flymon organized themselves in masses back in the ancient digital world. They organized themselves to digivolve into the ultimate stage of their development. Remember that digivolving in general is a difficult process, a process which demands much time and much experience, both of which Digimon could be lacking considerably considering how hectic and brutal the environment can be. In order to assure their survival, some Digimon used ancient relics like Digi-Eggs to perform a Digivolution known as Armor Digivolution, an ancient form of Digivolution that was developed when the digital world was young. Each Digi-Egg contains an elemental power and were left behind by various Digimon after their demise. Other Digimon would speed up their digivolving process in various ways, either by using Digimon natural resources or by experimentations. The list goes on. It shows how Digimon are great at adapting. But this brings us to Cocoomon. It is believed that in remote times of the digital world, some Flymon went into hiding places to gather as much energy as possible in order to overcome their limits, becoming Cocoomon. However, despite being a combination of many Flymon, Cocoomon is in fact an empty shell controlled by the dormant Flymon inside it, which might be the combination of all Flymon fused into one. Now, not too much is known about Cocoomon since it is almost never seen, and when found, most of the times they are hidden on a sticky honey hideout on the deepest part of the jungle. This form, however, is but the middle ground for Flymon's true evolution, which would normally be QueenFlymon, said to be the ruler of all insect Digimon. A benevolent ruler, that is, as it is wearing 2 holy rings on its wrists. Rings giving it great power relative to its holiness, essentially making it a holy species insect-type Digimon. While QueenFlymon has its own story and even a DNA Digivolution with another Digimon called QueenThornmon, Queen of Plant Digimon, making them become QueenSenitamon, something came in between and left a big impact. Impactomon is an ultimate level mineral Digimon that is also quite big in size when compared to the average human. However, being big is one thing, being capable of manipulating a body of that size is another. Impactomon is unable to reach great speeds while using its wings to fly, but what it lacks in muscle and wing power, it does compensate with the force of propulsion of the 2 main turbines on its back and the 4 side turbines with 2 on each wing. Because of it, the Digimon is able to reach stratospheric velocities. While Cocoomon and Impactomon are both Digimon drawn by Dragonrod Art, who did an amazing work with the designs and background stories, there is another Twitter account that goes by the name of Digimon Next Adventure, who created a Jogress, a fusion of the 2 named QueenBeemon, the queen of all Beemon, and one with the sovereignty extending over vast areas of the digital world. Even if QueenBeemon is but a creation from the community, there is no doubt that the developers could and should learn from what we as fans have to offer. We didn't exactly get much background story about this Queen of Bees, however, with the help of loyal supporters who commented in the Nostalgia 9to5 community page, you will come to see how much potential this QueenBeemon has. Marine Solar wrote the following: I love that it is very feminine looking but without all the boobies and naked skin. It is royal, composed, feminine, professional but also kind of motherly, a real queen. Now, as Ray Hayes rightly said, QueenBeemon looks like the true leader of FanBeemon, as the whole line appears to be missing a queen. We talked earlier about the FanBeemon Digivolution line. We came to understand that this Digimon cannot be counted by the hundreds, but potentially thousands of members, each of which having a certain responsibility inside the royal base. A mysterious aerial-covered honey base inhabited by FanBeemon, Waspmon, CanonBeemon, and Vespamon. These are the known members. Now, this royal base can be seen as a beehive the same way you'd expect from a colony of bees. It's important to stand still and think about the colony and how it is organized, because the royal base is almost the same, but in other aspects they differ drastically. To be very brief, you see, bees are social insects, which means that they live together in large, well-organized family groups. Social insects are highly evolved insects that engage in a variety of complex tasks not practiced by the multitude of solitary insects. Communication, complex nest construction, environmental control, defense, and division of the labor are just some of the behaviors that bees have developed to exist successfully in social colonies. Among the population, you first have the laying workers. These are female and the smallest, but constitute the majority of bees occupying the colony. They clean and polish the cells where you can find other eggs. They take care of the queen, guard the entrance, and later, as field bees, they forage for nectar, pollen, water, and plant sap. When a colony becomes queenless, for example after the demise of a queen, then the laying workers will start laying eggs in the hopes that one of those will hatch and give birth to the potential chosen queen. Other members are the drones. They are males and their main function is to fertilize the virgin queen during her mating flight, and when cold weather begins in the fall and pollen and nectar resources become scarce, drones usually are forced out in the cold and left to starve. Queenless colonies, however, allow them to stay in the hive indefinitely. And to finish, there is the queen. Her primary function is reproduction, but she has other tasks like producing pheromones that serve as a social glue, unifying and helping to give individual identity to a bee colony. Now, when you put a bee colony next to the royal base, the difference is simply mind-blowing. Some Digimon would have similar roles to the bee, like FanBeemon being a dedicated worker. It is responsible for carrying home data left on fields of flowers or vegetation to use as raw materials in the base. And speaking of, the base is still under construction, and by gathering data it will get fortified. Now, as the royal base is an aerial base, it is exposed to danger from every direction, so new roles were given to its population. That is where the royal base takes a complete different route than a bee colony. Waspmon has great reconnaissance abilities, so it is constantly patrolling the vicinity on the lookout for Digimon approaching the base. QueenBeemon serve as a long-range lookout, using the vast range of their arms containers to cover the entire surrounding area, and know that the Digimon is massive, meaning that its potential for mass destruction is extremely high. To finish, you have the elite Vespamon, who also defend the base but on the inside. More on this character later. While the Digimon developers gave us an equivalent of a bee colony with its population, they didn't give us a queen that is clearly lacking. And when you look at the way the FanBeemon line is behaving, I noticed two things. They are organized in such a way that they can and will retaliate with a force that is far from being equivalent to the potential threat. Just like a beehive but with lots of firepower. This leads me to believe that they are protecting something or someone, presumably QueenBeemon. What I also noticed is that FanBeemon is the only organic Digimon in the entire line. Its other forms are all part of the Metal Empire family. Members of this family are generally mechanical or mutated Digimon, and you will understand later on in this video how important this family groupings is to understanding more about Digimon heritage. Because FanBeemon is the only organic Digimon out of the bunch, I came to understand that it might have not digivolved naturally. There was a certain technological interference, because by all logic, bees only change depending on the way they are fed. This is why the royal base is such a gem, because they don't have the same organic weaknesses of bees. Most of them are cyborgs or androids who I believe were designed to occupy certain roles. And I can imagine if FanBeemon being either experimented on or given a certain technology and digivolved a bit the same way Greymon did when it appropriated technology from Andromon, making it Metal Greymon. And who else would be interested enough to feed FanBeemon, or better said, modify FanBeemon into becoming servants and defenders than the queen herself, who became a piece of technology in the first place after fusing in unknown circumstances. The Digimon is a technological masterpiece who took the bees and bee colonies as we know it as a blueprint and perfected that organization by being the founder of the royal base herself. Ran Segev wrote the following: QueenBeemon lives in the heart of the royal base, commanding and organizing any and all royal base Digimon. It is the royal base architect, is the royal base commander-in-chief and the highest authority. Once it decides the royal base is finished and they need to expand to another territory, it will select one of its soldiers and feed it a unique data accessible only to make it a new QueenBeemon. And I suspect that it is that same quote-unquote feeding that is used to make FanBeemon take the technology route and digivolve into Waspmon and later on QueenBeemon and Vespamon. Also, Shadow Force Lowe's was reminded of Eosmon while looking at QueenBeemon, and rightly so, because in a sense they are the same. Eosmon is a Digimon goddess in reference to the Greek goddess of dawn, Eos. It has been designed in a way to be huge, with the ability to generate new Eosmon at the ultimate level, so they are very powerful and in large numbers. And they all come from Eosmon's swollen tail, only ever increasing its subordinates, making the whole team, or maybe even colony, better speaking, only more of a threat. I also noticed that Eosmon is not so different than FanBeemon, because when you look at Eosmon's rookie form, meaning Morphomon, it appears organic just like FanBeemon, and all their other forms became either androids or robots, completely lacking feelings and emotions, only making it look as if they didn't get to their natural Digivolution. It's almost as if something else came in between. That much has already been confirmed with Morphomon, who only evolved because researchers created Eosmon by basing it on Morphomon. And considering QueenBeemon's potential intelligence, I wouldn't be surprised that it took a role in the creation of Waspmon, QueenBeemon and Vespamon by basing them on FanBeemon. Necro123 even claimed that QueenBeemon belongs to the smartest in all of the digital world. This brought me to many questions, such as where would that intelligence actually come from, and what would the purpose of the role base be? And Andres Marrero's comment contributed to even more questions. He wrote the following: QueenBeemon could be a vaccine type, though the FanBeemon line has always been odd for virus types. Instead of dominating everything nearby or warping the landscape, they are instead only concerned with building and protecting the role base, which may or may not contain a dying, aging queen. For virus types, they are defensive, not aggressive, which may be because of QueenBeemon. I like this comment because it reminds me of my background in university. As some of you would know, I studied international relations and diplomacy, and I learned a lot about warfare, and I can give two examples, well actually more, but I can give you two examples to explain why QueenBeemon could be a military and tactical genius. Now we are only talking theory-wise, but hear me out. In international relations theory, there is a concept called security dilemma. It is a situation where one state increases its own security, such as increasing its military strength, and this leads other states to fear for their own security because they do not know if the security increasing state intends to use its growing military for offensive purposes. Consequently, security increasing measures can lead to tensions, escalation, or conflict with one or more parties. What we know of the role base is that it is high up in the sky, and more than half of the Digimon cannot fly, and those powerful enough who can would see no interest in trying to attack the role base. In the meanwhile, FanBeemon keeps on gathering data, making the base grow stronger. So Andres, to reply to your comment, maybe QueenBeemon is a virus Digimon with nefarious purposes, but a virus Digimon with high intellect. Why would it dominate everything nearby at this very moment if it could simply be patient and wait for the opportune moment to take an even bigger chunk of the area? And if you claim that it is mostly defensive, what tells us that it cannot become offensive at the appropriate time? This leads us to the second example I wanted to give to explain why QueenBeemon could be a potential military and tactical genius. Have you ever heard of the Chinese general, military strategist, writer and philosopher named Sun Tzu? There's a quote of his that I find very fitting for QueenBeemon. Let me quote: "Every battle is won or lost before it is ever fought." As far as I can tell, it might be the case that QueenBeemon with the role base are only preparing themselves, and the surrounding population wouldn't even notice. After all, many of us believe that QueenBeemon is intelligent. The problem is we have no idea to what extent, so obviously we are still theorizing, but if it is the case, how come it would be so intelligent? What is the source? And I think I may have a theory or two. In one of our previous episodes we discussed PAILDRAMON's Digivolution line. PAILDRAMON is the fusion of ExVeemon and Stingmon, but with ExVeemon's data and somewhat its appearance being more pronounced than Stingmon's. And ExVeemon and PAILDRAMON being both of the dragon type, we can say that they are more the descendants of ancient Greymon. Although it doesn't mean that they would also inherit its flame. After all, PAILDRAMON is still 50% dragon via ExVeemon and 50% insect via Stingmon. As ancient Beetlemon would be Stingmon's ancestor, it is of no surprise that PAILDRAMON inherited its thunder to an extent. That thunder was in a way reactivated as Stingmon itself cannot use it. As so much attention has been given to PAILDRAMON, I became more and more curious about its counterpart DinoBeemon. Yet another fusion of ExVeemon and Stingmon, but with the latter's traits being more pronounced. Something always felt odd about this Digimon. It's as if it is either hiding something or trying to tell something, but what would that be? Some say that DinoBeemon is ExVeemon and Stingmon's fusion gone wrong, which I don't think is the case, although I can understand why people would have that assumption. It is still one who was nicknamed Terrible Bee, as it possesses a considerably ferocious personality. But I think you have to give DinoBeemon a bit more credit. Everyone has his or her personality, and being a ferocious person doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. A good example of a Digimon kind of gone wrong is Dexmon, or Death Xmon, in reference to the Death X evolution. This creature is considered a ghost life form and cannot be classified as a Digimon. It appears solid but has no actual substance. It doesn't live, nor is it dead. It only moves when Digicores are nearby, otherwise it will go into stasis, which is quaint because it doesn't have a Digicore itself. Dexmon would be a good example of a Digimon, if you could call it that, gone wrong. That is not the case with DinoBeemon. It is not a fusion gone wrong because it does have a Digicore, it does move around freely, and it does have a personality, albeit a ferocious and violent one, which, by the way, is actually exactly what you'd need if you want to survive in the digital world. Still, that same world where a bee colony has the same firepower as a developed nation. I admit I took much time to reflect and analyze and study DinoBeemon because it really feels like it is hiding something behind that ferocious personality. It is telling us something behind that presumably lack of intelligence, but what would that be? After taking days of thinking and reflecting, jumping from one source to the other, I was surprised and really shocked when I found the answer, which was standing there in front of my nose. Sometimes you don't need to think too far to have an answer. Let me tell you that we had it all wrong, my good friends. We were never really looking at DinoBeemon the right way. Look at its biography in the Digimon wiki. There is a very important quote that we didn't pay enough attention to. I'm talking about the quote which said the following, and I quote, "It is hard to classify its species as either a dragon type or an insect type, but its insect nature is more pronounced." Unquote. This quote says everything about DinoBeemon. You see, it can indeed be difficult to classify it as either a dragon type or an insect type, but who says that it has to be classified as either one of these two? Yes, even if it came to be from a dragon Digimon and an insect Digimon with an appearance that looks like that of an insect. Take Wargreymon and MetalGarurumon as examples. Wargreymon is a dragon man and MetalGarurumon is either a cyborg or an android. When they fuse, they become Omnimon, who is a holy knight. It became something entirely different than the component Digimon. When you take a good look at DinoBeemon's profile, despite looking like an insect Digimon, it has been classified as a mutant Digimon. And this changes everything because now we might have an explanation about its ferocious personality. We might get a better glimpse as to its true potential, and even better, we now know that its ancestor is not ancient Beetlemon, which perhaps could explain why DinoBeemon can't use thunder. Because it is not classified as an insect Digimon, it only has the appearance and some properties of an insect. This would mean that DinoBeemon's true ancestor would be AncientWisemon, the wisest person in the digital world, and those who would normally directly inherit its power are mutant Digimon. As a fan of the Game of Thrones series, I do remember how my favorite character, Peter Baelish, also known as Littlefingers, said that knowledge is power. In the same way, I do believe that AncientWisemon is one who lives with the same idea, and this explains why I see this Digimon as the most mysterious Digimon out of the 10 legendary warriors group. You see, AncientWisemon is the holder of the Akashic Records, a compendium of all universal events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms. This means that AncientWisemon is all-knowing with abilities to forecast the future. I spoke about the Akashic Records in the Explaining Witchelny video because my theory suggests that it was lost in that area after AncientWisemon's passing. Now, out of the few things we know about the 10 legendary warriors is that they formed a team to stop a major menace. We do not know what the team synergy might have looked like, we do not know whether the members liked each other or not, but as some represented opposite attributes, chances exist that some could have gone as far as to despise certain members, but only temporarily put their differences aside for the greater good. But before their passing, they did make sure to give their power to their own chosen inheritors. And with that gift, the 10 legendary warriors might have wanted to make sure their inheritors would better adapt and survive the different challenges they would have to face, regardless of how the other inheritors of the other members of the 10 legendary warriors would fare. And sure, the 10 ancient warriors might have united to assure the survival of the digital world, but nothing guaranteed that their inheritors would do the same. Nothing guaranteed that their inheritors would coexist peacefully, and there are plenty of examples given in the series and in the background of Digimon to prove that there is indeed this battle of everyone against everyone, even if they are of the same type. However, oddly so, some Digimon did get the message of union and did find reasons to unite despite their differences. Let me explain. You see, we all know what the 10 legendary warriors gave to their inheritors. Ancient Greymon gave its flame, Ancient Megatheriumon gave its ice, Ancient Sphinxmon gave its darkness. But what did AncientWisemon give? In its description, it is said that it possesses the attribute of steel, which is weird because none of its attacks are steel based, and even in its appearance, there is nothing that can tell that steel plays an important role. So, what did it give, and more important, to whom? Because even if it is said that AncientWisemon gave its powers to mutant Digimon, how can you pinpoint which Digimon is of the mutant type? Remember, it is said that DinoBeemon is of the mutant type, and yet we are stuck thinking about whether it is more a dragon or an insect. I dug deeper looking for answers and actually found them when I stopped by Sakakumon, the legacy of AncientWisemon. It is said that Sakakumon possesses thinking like that of a machine, which lacks emotions. It is constantly analyzing the enemy, accurately pointing out their weak points. Everything it ever does is making calculations and predictions, which brought me to the following question. If Sakakumon is thinking like a machine, wouldn't it mean that the attribute of steel, which it inherited, is more a reference to the intelligence and knowledge that was given by AncientWisemon? This means that mutant Digimon, who are AncientWisemon's direct inheritors, have either the potential of developing great intelligence or lacking it entirely. Just like some insect Digimon are capable of using electricity and other insect Digimon cannot. Let me give you an example. Sukamon is a mutant Digimon born from the accumulation and mutation of scrub data. It has clearly been stated that its intelligence is non-existent. However, when it digivolves into King Sukamon, it is stated that it is highly intelligent. I believe that AncientWisemon's attribute of steel is more a reference to its intelligence. It's more a reference to that way of thinking which is very scientific and based on calculations. And it would make sense as AncientWisemon has the ability to forecast the future. If it wants to save its own kind, if it has certain wishes on how it would love to see the digital world being lived, it certainly does have the intelligence to calculate far into the future and even indirectly become the very architect of the future. It is a fact that AncientWisemon gave its steel powers to mutant Digimon, but I believe that its powers indirectly gave birth to a new type of Digimon, the cyborg and androids. After all, they are mechanical Digimon, and these, just like with machines, they always have metals and steel inside and outside their bodies. And robots are machines, meaning that they act based on their programs, and these are based on calculations and probabilities. All machine Digimon are brought together under the umbrella family known as Metal Empire. Members of this family are generally mechanical Digimon or mutated Digimon. And guess who is both a mutant Digimon and one with Metal Empire genetics, among a few others? DinoBeemon. As we have now a solid background about DinoBeemon in terms of genetics and classification, we now have a better idea of its potential and even what it could do if it were to digivolve. PAILDRAMON did get so much attention by the Digimon developers, but it wasn't the case for DinoBeemon, so the fandom decided to give it a proper mega form, which absolutely made total sense. But before exposing it, there is another piece of background that I need to bring forth. You see, it is not a coincidence that I'm talking about the all-knowing AncientWisemon, the FanBeemon line, QueenBeemon and DinoBeemon in the same video, because the more I dug into Digimon lore, the more it felt that they are all of them connected. And DinoBeemon especially is a special case, as it has the looks of an insect while being classified as a mutant type. It does not show much metal, but is still a member of the Metal Empire family, and to finish, its name is ending with Beemon, giving it a specific group it belongs to, despite having a totally different appearance than all of them, and despite the fact it might not even want to be a part of that group. Now, from DinoBeemon's profile, I can easily imagine that it would accidentally trespass QueenBeemon's territory, which would normally result in a clash. And you know what? Maybe there was a clash. However, one that clearly was not in its favor. As the world base is made mostly of androids and cyborgs, robots, I'm sure that the data of an attacking DinoBeemon out front would quickly travel to the Queen's ear, that would find DinoBeemon a very interesting specimen. After all, they have so much in common. DinoBeemon and QueenBeemon are both of the bee species. DinoBeemon and the entire FanBeemon line are of the virus nature. DinoBeemon and the entire FanBeemon line belong to the Metal Empire family, and DinoBeemon is a mutant Digimon, meaning that it might have the potential to awaken great knowledge, or at least the type of knowledge that could be very useful inside the royal base. As a result, DinoBeemon would find its way inside the royal base either via abduction, something that would certainly not be foreign to the royal base, considering all their technologies to incapacitate opponents, or DinoBeemon would enter freely and be suggested a certain treatment. Remember that FanBeemon began organically and suddenly its whole line became machines? No doubt they have been fed something by the Queen, and just like that, DinoBeemon would be taken as one of them and become the subject to a certain treatment, making it Digivolve into PrimalVespamon, a Digimon that I would give a perfect score in terms of design, in terms of being the Digivolution of DinoBeemon. When you put it next to Impactomon, you can see the similarities in terms of colors and armor, except that Impactomon took the dragon route and PrimalVespamon took more the insect route, or the bee route, maybe better said. And PrimalVespamon is a wonderful addition to the royal base because at the end of the day, there is not one but a multiplicity of Vespamon in existence, and only one has been confirmed, TigerVespamon, said to have been given the codename Tiger, as it is by far the best in solo combat. But just like that, deep inside the royal base, you will come across many different B-type Digimon with different roles and various Vespamon type of Digimon, each with their own specialty. Now, what would PrimalVespamon's specialty be? My personal opinion, I would see it as the second in command, praised for its high intelligence, but not just that. I see it as both highly intelligent in terms of tactics, but also very lethal in combat. And my opinion is kind of backed by a flaming idiot who wrote the following: though once mad with feral instincts, through the collection of data its mind has sharpened. Now possessing keen but sadistic intellect, this Digimon makes sport of hunting down its prey. Super Game Freak 18 even see it as a warmongering leader that commands a legion of DinoBeemon, and why not? And imagine that this legion of DinoBeemon would also be created inside the royal base. To finish, I would like to say the following. QueenBeemon's empire is not one that stands only because of its strength, but also because of its tactical brilliance. They are all of the virus type, but are not offensive in nature. I said that it is probably because they are waiting for the opportune moment, and there is one that would end up presenting itself. You see, all members inside the royal base are all carriers of the X antibody, a vaccine that would make Digimon immune to the X program, which was launched by the ever-watchful Yggdrasil after the digital world became too overpopulated up to a point where it couldn't handle it anymore. Yggdrasil wiped out over 95% of the Digimon population, and only a very small percentage moved to a new digital world. The whole QueenBeemon army would have survived that genocide, and they would have gotten much stronger after using the X antibody. That would become the opportune moment for the Queen to expand its territory, and all of that with the advice of her trusted advisor, PrimalVespamon. Hey guys, this is the end of the video. If you have made it this far, I must say a big thank you and sorry for having grabbed so much of your time. It's actually something I don't like to do, and I admit maybe I might have made this video much shorter. It's just that I value the story of a character more than the design. Don't get me wrong, QueenBeemon and PrimalVespamon look absolutely stunning, but by giving them this story, I was hoping to help you look at them from another point of view. I was hoping to connect the dots and also explain why DinoBeemon is such a masterpiece that I don't think the Digimon developers truly realize unless we are getting its next Digivolution, that is. Also, some of you were talking about a possible mode change for DinoBeemon. While I couldn't find one online, I did find a good inspiration, Gilgamon. I think that a mode change for DinoBeemon, well, actually PrimalVespamon, should look a bit like Gilgamon, as it has that insect touch when you look at the claws and the fact that it has 4 arms, and yet it has that humanoid touch on it. Honestly guys, what do you think of the design? I will put the link towards Gilgamon's page in the description box. In the meanwhile, if you don't mind, please subscribe and drop a like and a comment in the comment section. Also, if you want more of this kind of videos, you will find them in the Digi Fan Art playlist, which is always updated. That way you can catch up on the newer and older videos.